Good day, everyone. My name is Rich Chester, and I'm the Director of Business Intelligence for LPA Software Solutions. It's my pleasure to be with you today to talk to you about a new feature in the IBM Cognos Analytics release called Data Modules. Our agenda for today is I'll describe what data modules are and what you use them for, and then I'll talk you through the way you create data modules. We'll talk specifically about the data sources for them, how you create relationships, talk about calculations and filtering. And then I'm going to do a demonstration of creating a data module and then creating a report and a dashboard from that module. At the end of the demonstration, I will answer questions that you will have submitted, and I'll provide as many answers as I can in the time that we have. So please submit your questions throughout the presentation using the chat feature of the WebEx. At the end, I'll answer as many questions as time permits. If there are questions that have not been answered that you guys have submitted, I will answer all of your questions that are submitted after the webinar via email. So anything I don't get to on the air, we'll get to after the webinar via email. So with that all said, let's talk about what data modules are. Well, they're part of this Cognos Analytics release. Some people call it version 11. By the way, the demonstration I'm doing today will be on version 11.0.2. That's what's running on the VM that I'll be using. The release of Cognos Analytics included a number of new things. If you have listened to some of my previous webinars on introducing Cognos Analytics, you'll know that it's introduced a whole new way of navigating a portal. It's introduced the ability to upload files for analysis, introduced the ability to do analyses not only with a reporting tool, which replaced both Report Studio and Cognos Workspace Advanced, but also to create dashboards for analyses. And today's webinar is focused on the capability called Data Modules that allows you to create metadata. Now, we're used to thinking of metadata as packages that are published from Framework Manager. This is another type of metadata that we can now create using this web-based modeling tool called Data Modules. Now, with the data modules, I can use any number of different types of sources. Specifically, I can use relational databases, and I would connect to them directly using this tool, and I would model from their contents. I can also connect to Hadoop-based databases. I can connect to Excel spreadsheets that I have uploaded, and I can connect to text files, comma separated values files, tab delimited files that I have uploaded. And I can actually mix and match in the same data module components from any or all of these source types. Once I've created my data module, I can save it. If it's private to me, in other words, I only expect that I will be creating analyses based on this metadata, then I would save it in my content area. If this is a data module that I would anticipate having multiple people, say my team or perhaps even my whole enterprise, leveraging to create reports and analyses, then I would save it out in my team content area where others could get at it. But regardless of where I store it, once I have a data module, I can use it to create a report. So reports now can be created both from packages, as we are used to in Cognos 10 and before, and data modules. There are a couple of caveats in terms of the tools that are available to you when you leverage a data module, and I will point those out when I'm using a data module for a report during my demonstration. You can also use data modules for dashboards. Dashboards can be sourced from data modules or uploaded files. If you have not seen our webinar on dashboards, go to www.lpa.com/resources, and you'll find posted there the webinar that we recently did on dashboards. So you'll get a full hour on that capability. So that's what the data modules are, metadata from which I can build a report or a dashboard. So how do we go about creating them? Well, the first thing we need is a data source. I can build a data module from one data source, or I can build it from multiple data sources. And the types of data sources are uploaded files, In our introduction to Cognos Analytics webinar, I talked a bit about the notion of self-service business intelligence. And one of the concepts in self-service BI is giving your end users the ability to create analyses against their own data sets. And this uploaded files is a big part of enabling that capability with Cognos Analytics. I can upload Excel files, I can upload comma-separated values files, and I can upload tab delimited files. Those are uploaded and stored on the Cognos server, and I can then leverage them in a data module. Data servers are connections directly to databases. Now, these could be the same connections that our administrator has defined for use by packages. So the administration console allows me to create new data sources. I connect to databases there through a driver, and I can make those available as a data server. But I can also create data servers through this manage capability in Cognos Analytics that are just data servers. They're not also data source connections for packages, and I can put security on them, and they could be leveraged in a new data module just by creating them through this manage capability. That is an administrator capability. That would not typically be an end user capability, however. So data servers are connections to databases, could be leveraging the ones I've already created as data sources through the admin console, or could be these new data servers created through the manage capability as shown in the screenshot. I could also take a data module that's already been saved, and I can use it as a component of a new data module. So if you will, I could build on top of an existing data module, a new data module. So I can mix and match any collection of uploaded files, any collection of data servers that have been defined, and previously written data modules to create a new data module with which I will create reports and dashboards so that I can present analyses either by myself or with a shared data module out in team content. Others can also leverage that metadata to create analyses. Now, as I'm creating my data module and I've selected my data sources, I could create it entirely by hand. I could go ahead and drag over the individual tables from some data source connections. I could drag over a collection of data from uploaded files, and I could then build my metadata by hand. However, there is this feature that is called intent-driven modeling that is part of the tool that allows me to type in the analysis I would like to do. And as I type it in, as you see in the screenshot, I typed in sales R, and up came suggestions: sales rank, sales ratio, sales recipients, and so on. And that set of suggestions is actually based on Cognos having analyzed the sources I selected. Now in the screenshot, I selected a data warehouse, the sample data, Go Sales data warehouse. But if I'd selected multiple data sources of different types, this still would work. It would analyze the metadata that is part of the sources I've selected. And then in this intent-driven area, it will give me suggestions. And then once I've finished typing in my phrase, let's say sales revenue, and I hit go, it will propose for me a collection of objects from my data sources that match my intent. I can leverage the proposal, or I could just change my intent, or I could leverage the proposal and then modify it by hand. Perhaps it's proposed 12 tables. I happen to know I won't need one of them, so I can leverage the proposal, and then I can remove the extra table, for example. Or I could add tables to the proposed once I've accepted it. So the proposal is not the end, right? It's a start, a rapid start to my ultimate data module. So this intent-driven notion, by the way, is also driven in driving dashboards. There's an intent searcher in dashboards as well that searches your available data sources and presents analyses. This is a way for me to search the data sources I've selected and present a model. So I'll show you this intent-based modeling as we go. Now, I have a bunch of objects from my data sources now in my data module. That could be through having added them by hand, or it could be through having used the intent-based tool either way, though. I need to take a look at the objects that are in my model and make sure that there are relationships between them. So for example, let's say I added two spreadsheets. There's no natural relationship between the two spreadsheets in terms of their individual metadata. So in that case, I'm going to have to create a join, a relationship between those two spreadsheets. If I had brought in 5 tables from a data warehouse, the metadata in the data warehouse may actually have described foreign key, primary key type relationships. And so the tool will actually bring those relationships in and implement them. But when I'm looking at my model, I should be suspicious of any object, any one table, any one file that doesn't have a relationship, because that means that the data in that object can't be combined with any of the other data in the data module when I go to write my report. And often that's a sign of a missing relationship. It's not that we must have relationships, but we should be skeptical of any tables in our data modules that don't have relationships to at least one other table or object in my data module. So I can create, modify, delete relationships, and so we'll be doing that in our demonstration. A reminder about relationships in a metadata object. They typically have 2, in this case 3 characteristics. The first characteristic is a join type. For the SQL folks in the audience, when we write SQL joins between 2 tables, we can write them as inner joins, which are only matching rows from the 2 tables in the join. Left joins, which means table 1's rows will all be there and only the matching rows from table 2. A right join is the opposite. It will be all of table 2's rows will be in the result set and only matching rows from table 1, and then an outer join, which means I'll have every row from both table 1 and table 2, and of course the rows that match will be combined onto a single result row, and then I will have rows for just the unmatched from table 1 and the unmatched from table 2. So the join type is something I specify. One component of the inner, left, right, and outer is, do I want only the matching rows, right? Or do I want the matching and unmatching? And when I express my join type, as you'll see, I express it in English. So I don't have to know SQL. I don't have to write code to specify my join type. Now, another characteristic that's always part of a relationship is what's called cardinality. And what this means is if I have table 1 and table 2, or a spreadsheet being joined to a table, doesn't matter which, I need to indicate if the left side is going to have multiple rows that match the right side. So, if I have a table that has a list of employees and there's 1 row per employee in it, and I have another table that represents the positions that an employee has held in my company, right? Then I would have, if a person's moved around in the company, they would have multiple rows in that second object in table 2. So table 1, unique list of employees. Table 2, a list of all the positions that all of our employees have ever held. Those would be called a 1 to n relationship. In other words, there'll be one and only one record in the table 1, but there could be 0, 1, or more records in table 2. On the other hand, if I have a list of employees on one side and a list of characteristics about that employee in terms of demographics on the other side, and there's 1 row on both sides, that's a 1-to-1. And the other type is many to many. So inner, left, right, outer, 1-to-1, 1-to-many, many-to-many are my cardinalities. And then there's this third option in my data module called a filter join optimization selection. Join optimization was introduced in Cognos 10, and it goes something like this. The most common join is one of the first examples I gave you, the employee and all their positions in 2 separate tables. That's called a 1-to-many join or a 1-to-n join. And it turns out you can make those joins go much faster if you actually take the keys from the one side, in this case my list of employees, and pre-filter the many side, in this case the positions, before you do the join. So let's suppose that I have a list of employees, and what I want are the employees that I've hired since January 1st of 2016. Well, that's a subset of the data on my left-hand side table. If I just do the join, it will join all my employees regardless of their hire date to all of their positions, and then I would filter if I'm not using this optimization technique. On the other hand, if I use the optimization technique, I can filter the one side, the list of employees, to just those that were hired this year. Then take that list of employee IDs, filter the position side so that I get just the subset of positions that belong to those employees, and then do the join to match them up, and I will end up with a much faster join. So optionally, when I create a relationship in a data module, I can create this join optimization. I can indicate which join optimization to use if I wish to. So those are the three components of a relationship. And I'll be creating relationships between some uploaded files that I'll be uploading in my demo. So you'll see what I'm talking about as I create those relationships. Now, sometimes the data that is in your source, in your tables, in your uploaded spreadsheets, and so on, do not contain the data that I necessarily want for my analysis, but I can derive the data that I want from the components in those objects. So, for example, in my screenshot, I show that I have a quantity and a unit cost. So if I want the extended cost, right, the total cost, quantity times unit cost, that doesn't happen to be in my data set, but I can create a calculation. Just highlight quantity and unit cost, right-click, create a calculation, and up will come 4 arithmetic expressions, and I can pick quantity times unit cost, and I'll create a new object in my metadata that has that calculation in it. If this is a calculation that would be common across many of the analyses that I'm doing with this data module, I would want that calculation to be here in my data module as opposed to in every report written from my data module. I can also do calculations on string data. There's an expression builder so that I can do more complex calculations than just the simple arithmetic shown in that first screenshot. And there is a function library that I can leverage while I run these expressions. A lot of the same functions that we're used to when we write reports. And then finally, there's a notion called cleaning my text data. Now, cleaning my text data really allows me to do up to 3 things. So I don't have to do all 3 in the cleanse activity, but I could choose to trim any leading or trailing white space. So if there's prefixed blanks or suffixed blanks in my data, I could indicate to the data module that I want that cleaned up and removed. Similarly, I might have data in a column that is mixed case. And often when I analyze, especially in a case-sensitive type database, right, having ABC all in uppercase and ABC all in lowercase, I want them to match, but they won't naturally match because they're different cases. So I could use this cleansing tool to actually convert everything to upper or everything to lower in that column so that like data will match. So I could do that in addition to or instead of trimming the white space. And then finally, I could also substring that data. Let's take, for example, a column that has an account number. Often our account numbers have built-in positional intelligence. Position 1, 2, 3 means something, position 4 through 7 means something, and so on. It could be that for this data module, I only need a substring. I only need positions 4 through 7 rather than the entire account number. So I can use this clean text data capability, which I get to by doing right-click on the string column and choose clean. That's shown in the second screenshot there. I could just return a substring. So I've got those 3 options in the clean, and they replace the column with the cleaned data is the result of doing the clean capability. So calculations to derive new data from the data that I have in my source components, the tables I pulled in from my data sources or the uploaded files. And then finally, maybe I don't want all the data that's in those uploaded files or in those tables in the database. Perhaps the analysis that I'm doing with my data module, it would only need a subset of that data. Perhaps this data module is just about the employees hired since the first of the year. So rather than have that filter be in every report that I write or in every dashboard that I create from this data module, perhaps I would embed that filter right in the data module, and this would be the employees hired since January 1st, 2016 data module. So I can do that. I can add a filter to my data module to create a subset of the data when the and let me say that differently, because it doesn't create a copy of the data, and so I don't want to leave you with that false impression. What it'll do is automatically filter every time I use the data module to the subset I've described. So it does not create a separate copy. I don't want that to be what you take away. It is an on-the-fly filter that is always applied to every analysis or report written from this data module. So I've selected my sources. I have taken the subsets of those sources that I want in my data module and added them to the model. I've created a collection of relationships so that the tables that are related to each other, which means they have common data in them, right, are expressed in terms of the type of join and the cardinality of the join and perhaps this optimization technique. I've added calculations to derive new valuable information from the data that is in those sources. And then I've added filters potentially to express that I only need a subset of the total data in some or several of the objects in my model. Then I save that model. I save it either to my folders if it's going to be a private data module, or I save it to team content if it's going to be a shared data module. And then I can write a dashboard or a report from it. So with that all said, let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and create a data module. I'm going to create a data module today out here on my Cognos Analytics environment by uploading 3 files. So I'm going to do it all from 3 files. Before I do that, though, I wanted to show you this notion of data servers. So in the data servers under manage, and again, this is an administrator function, so this would not be an end user function. If you click on data servers, you'll see I have 2 of them that happen to be a copy of, or a reference to, more specifically, data source connections that I previously defined in the administration console. However, they don't have to have been defined in the administration console. I could define a new one right here. I click on this plus, and then I click on the type of database that I will be leveraging in my data module through this new data server. And you can see there's a collection of, let's say, very familiar relational database types like SQL Server and Oracle. If you have a Netezza box, that would be here. But you also have some of the newer big data type connections that you could create here, including also web-based databases like DashDB, the Cloudera databases, what's another one here? Oh, how about Hive? So it's not just limited to your run-of-the-mill databases. If you were to create one, like for example, a SQL Server connection, it'll let you name it. It'll ask you where that SQL Server lives, what port you're communicating on, the database you want to connect to, how you want to sign on to that data source, and so on. And this becomes a data server, and data servers are leveraged in data modules. It does not become a data source of the traditional data source that we think of when we are creating data sources to use, let's say, in Framework Manager. So they're 2 separate collections. However, I can share data sources as data servers, as I have done here with these 2 data sources. Now, again, I'm not going to use these in my demonstration. Just the interests of time. There's so many different combinations of things I might do. I've chosen just to go ahead and use some files that I'm going to upload. So I'm going to use the upload files, first of all, to upload these files. These 3 Excel files are the ones I'm going to use. This project data file is a list of all of the projects in a time tracking system, for example. It's just the project ID and the project name, nothing fancy. When you upload a file, you're presented with this metadata screen to indicate, first of all, if you want all of the columns in the uploaded file to be available. In this case, there's only 2 columns, and I do want them both. Also to indicate if this is a measure or a non-measure. Measures would be aggregated in our reports, things we'd total up. They're always numbers of some kind, but they're not every number. A year, a project ID is not a measure. In this case, I have no measures, so I can just click OK. And now it will store this file in my content, because uploaded files go to your my content by default. You can move them to team content if you want to share the content. In this case, I'm gonna keep it all in my content. Let me upload a second file. So this file is the project rate data. So this is going to be a list of employees, as well as the hourly bill rate that we would charge for that employee working on a particular project. So you see I have a project ID. I have an employee ID. Again, both numbers, neither are measures, right? They're both attributes. I have the employee's name, and then I have a bill rate. This is a dollar amount per hour that I would charge. So if you think about timesheets for a company that is billable hours, then there's a rate for each project that's assigned for each resource, and that's what this table describes. So it doesn't tell me the name of the project. That's the other spreadsheet. It doesn't tell me the information about the hours that, say, this fellow Richard Buck has charged to this project ID. But it does tell me that for all the hours he charged to that project ID, they're $119 an hour. So this is all set as far as metadata goes. I'll hit OK, and let me upload and describe my third file. And you've probably already guessed what it is, and that is the timesheet data. So this is going to be the data that describes the project that a person worked on, who that person was, and how many hours they billed against that hour, the number of hours for that project. In this case, it's not by day. There's no date or anything, so that must be in total. And again, project ID and employee ID are not measures. Hours are. You see, it's rather smart when it interprets the metadata and it gives you suggestions. Of course, you could turn off that this is a measure at this point. That's why this screen exists. But it was right. Hours is a measure. It's something I want to aggregate and use in math. So I can just click OK. And now I've uploaded the 3 files I'd like to analyze. Now, in and of themselves, these files could be used individually, alone, if you will, in a dashboard. I don't need a data module to write a dashboard that includes data just from one of these files. Thing is, data from just one of these files actually makes no sense. It doesn't give me any value in a dashboard or a report. It's only when I combine the data in these 3 files that I get some useful info. And that's why I'm going to create a data module, is to describe the combine. So I'm going to do a new data module, dashboard to be premature. I will say that I'm going to use uploaded files. I'm going to pick the 3 files I just uploaded together, and those are my data sources. I'll click Start. Now, what it's doing is it's examining the metadata in those data sources so that I could describe an intent. And what I might say is revenue by employee. Now you see, it's come up with that as a suggestion. If I click Go, it's going to take a look at my data and tell me, well, to do that, I only need timesheet and project rate. So you see, it's decided I don't need the project data because I didn't say revenue by project by employee. So it didn't think I would need to bring in this project data. I'm going to go ahead and accept this proposal just so you can see that we'll add those 2 tables from my data sources to my module. There is no relationship between them. Yes, see, there's no line. And then I can, by hand, add in the project data so that I have all the data that I know I need. Right? So when I use the intent tool, it doesn't mean that I'm stuck with the proposal. I can augment the proposal as I've just done. So let me go ahead and now create some relationships. So my project data is related to both my project rate data by the project ID, and my timesheet. You see I've got common data across all 3 of them. And my project rate data is related to timesheet by the employee ID as well. So I'm going to create a join between timesheet data and project rate data that's going to match on both project ID and employee ID. And I'm going to create a join from project data, and I'm going to create that join to the timesheet data as well. Could I join it to here? Yes, I could. Up to me. you make choices as a modeler in terms of how you describe your joins. So I'm going to start by doing a join between timesheet and project rate data. And what I did is click and control click to select them both. I'll right click, choose join. Up will come this join tool. And what it'll do is it will show me data so that I can see what's in common. Will help me as I pick the columns to join on, is the notion. So it turns out that I'm going to join on employee ID on both sides, and I'm going to add a second, and I'm going to join on project ID on both sides, just like I described earlier. Now I have to decide the join type. This is, do I want an inner, a left, a right, or an outer? But you see, I do that in English. I say, give me the matching rows, that's an inner. Give me all timesheet data, and then just the matching rows of project rate, that's left. This next one is right, and this next one, all rows on both sides, is outer. So I don't have to know those terms, I just have to read the English. So matching rows is what I need. Cardinality is how many on the left will match how many on the right. So my timesheet data that lists my employee and my project, I get one row per employee and project. And my project rate data, I get one row per employee and project. So the cardinality is actually 1-to-1 in this case, because I have one row for every unique combination of employee and project in this table, spreadsheet, and one row for every combination of employee and project ID in this spreadsheet. So it's a 1-to-1 relationship. And with spreadsheets, this join optimization doesn't apply. So I'll click OK to join them, and now you'll see there's a line. Now in the screenshot, you might remember that there were numbers. There was a 1-to-many, 1-to-n, and so on here. That is an option I can turn on if I wish. If I go under the I up here, under change view, I can tell it to show me the cardinality. And you see now it shows me that it's 1-to-1. I kind of like that. So another join. So now I want to join my project data to my timesheet data. So I'm going to go ahead and take project data and timesheet data, click and control click, right click and join. Same notion here. So my projects are going to match many employees or many timesheet records, I should say. So you see, for a project, I may have 5 employees on it. So the project will appear 5 times in the timesheet data, but it will only appear once in my project data. So this is a 1-to-many join. So I will click here to join on project ID on both sides. And down here, I will say, again, what do I want? Just the matching rows, or do I want to preserve all the rows on one side or the other? And matching rows and inner join is what I want here. And in this case, each project data could match one or more timesheet data rows. So this is a 1-to-many type join. That happens to be the default. And then because it's 1-to-many, I have the join optimization option that I described earlier. It really only applies to the 1-to-many world. 1-to-1, it doesn't apply. That's why it wasn't available in my first join. I'll click OK, leaving the defaults there. And so now I have a 1-to-1 and a 1-to-many. Now at this point, I've got my relationships done. So that was, if you will, slide 2. Picked my data sources, did my intent-based, did my relationships. Now I may choose to do calculations, or I may choose to do filters. So if I was going to do a filter, I could filter on last name by right-clicking and choosing filter. And what it'll do is it will let me pick. And so if this data module was only for a subset of my employees, I would come in here and I would click on that subset, so that when I wrote reports and analyses from this, it auto would filter to just the employees I want. So if I do these 3, then the data module would only be returning rows for those 3 employees. Now, you note this invert button, I'll click it. What invert does is it says, take the ones that I've selected, uncheck them, and all the ones that I didn't select, check them. Okay, so that's what invert does. I won't add a filter at this time. I just wanted to show you the notion of a filter. And I could filter all of the objects, one of the objects, whatever makes the most sense based on the analysis I'm trying to support using this data module. So what I'd like to do is create a calculation. And what I'd like to do is multiply hours times bill rate. And so to do that, I need to control click on hours, or click on hours, pardon me, control click on bill rate, right click, and choose create a calculation. And in this case, it's going to suggest for me the simple math that I actually want hours times bill rate, so I will go ahead and do that. Even if I pick the wrong one, I can switch it here. And if I wanted to change the order of my operands, I could do that here. And turns out with multiplication, doesn't matter. I can give it a name, and so I'll call this as revenue. And hours times bill rate is correct, so I'll do create, and you see it creates for me a measure called revenue from that. Now, every object here has a set of properties. If I go to the more ellipsis here and click on it, and I look at properties, you'll see that it is a measure, which makes sense. The aggregate is total, so here I can change the aggregate. So all you modelers out there that are used to thinking about usage and aggregation, same thing here in this web-based modeling tool. All of those settings are perfectly fine. So I have completed the creation of my data module. What I'd like to do now, I gotta close that. What I'd like to do now is give it a go as the source for a report. So it turns out there's this button up here that even without having saved the data module, I can click on. And what it'll do is it'll launch the reporting environment, and it will use the metadata I've just described in the data module and allow me to create a simple list report from it. So if I want to create a, let's see, I want to put the employee's last name. I want to put the project name. Oh, you see it's in preview mode. In the authoring tool, I can be in preview mode, design mode, or structure mode. So instead of waiting, I'm just going to go into design mode. I'll put the project name on, and I'll drop the revenue on. And this is going to fire all of my joins, right? I'm going to go ahead and group by the last name. Oh, where's my toolbar? Oh, how funny that my toolbar didn't come up. Oh well, we'll figure out what's going on there later. I won't group by last name. I'll just run. Interesting, maybe the try me, that group by button didn't come up because it's in try me. So we'll run this report. Now it's going to read the data from those spreadsheets, do the joins that are described in my data module, and it's going to present me with the results. That's going to have done the calculation. That's going to list the projects and the people's last names. It is an interactive. Oh no, it's here. Now I've got my toolbar that I wanted. Excellent. So it's an interactive report because that's the default for new reports written in the tool. So I'll go ahead and I'll click on the group by button now so I can get what I originally wanted in the first place. And because I grouped it, it's going to total it up for me. I can click and control click things so that I can, let me just click, and I should have, perhaps I don't. Again, I'm getting interesting results here. Maybe I want to format these columns, but the point is I was able to write a report that joined 3 spreadsheets in a Cognos tool, something I have never, ever been able to do before. I do not need to store this, excuse me, I don't need to store this output. This is a test report that I don't need to save. So I can leave this page. Now I'm back to the data module, which is worth keeping. So I will save it. I will store it in my content. Since my data is there, it makes no sense to put the data module that accesses that data out in team content because no one will be able to use it but me anyway. So I'll just call it my data module. I'll hit save. Let me close the data module editor. Let me go to my content. I'll show you that there's my data module. If I click on the more ellipsis, you'll see that I can create a report from it or create a dashboard from it. I'm going to go back and create a report and just point out a couple of things. If you haven't looked at the new reporting environment, this is it. I don't have a lot of time to go into this today because I do want some time for your questions. But it is a unified environment that combines all the things in Report Studio and Workspace Advanced into one environment. I'm going to go ahead and just create a one-column report. I'll click and do a list report. I will I'll go ahead and add some data. Let's suppose that I just want employees and their total revenue for all the data that's in this. Now you see here I'm getting those on-demand toolbars that I was looking for last time. I don't need to group anything this time because I'm just going to get a row per person, so there's no duplicate rows. But I do want to sort my data, and what I want to do is I want to sort it by, let's say I want to sort it by revenue descending. Okay. Now, so far, this is behaving just like a regular report. In other words, a report built from a package, which in my head is still a regular report. There are a couple of things, though, that you should be aware of in terms of using a data module in a report. One of them is that the query calculation tool is not available to you when you use a data module as a source for your report. I don't understand why. I haven't found anyone to ask, to be perfectly honest. But if I wanted to create a calculation here in my report, I could not use the query calculation tool, which is what my go-to tool would be to create a calculation like that. Another thing that I'm used to being able to do in a report is being able to go in and modify the query. If I go to my Explorer, to my Explorer bar here, and I go to my Query Explorer, I cannot edit my query, which is unique again to using a data module as a data source for reports. Those are probably the two biggest things that I've noticed in terms of reporting from a data module. I just wanted to point them out so you had those in the back of your mind, which is why, in my opinion, it's very important that the data module include all of the calculations that you want to support in the data, and that it includes the filters that you want and that kind of thing. Not to say that you can't filter. It's just that you can't because you can. But it's to say that complex filters or doing joins across multiple queries are not supported at this time when a data module is your source. So you need to do all of that in the data module rather than doing any of that in the report. And that's very different than when we write a report from a package. So I just wanted to point that out. In terms of dashboards, let me go ahead and create a dashboard from this data module. And dashboards, again, there's a whole hour on this that's available to you out on the LPA website, lpa.com/resources. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Well, that's interesting. I seem to have hung up my Cognos environment. Oh, well, let me get out and get back in. And let's, this is what happens when you do live demonstrations, I guess. Let me go ahead and sign in. And I'm going to do it. I'm going to go in, add it a slightly different way. I'll say create a new dashboard. And when I do that, I will pick a template. And then I will pick my data source, which will be my module. And then what I can do is I can put, let me take revenue. And that's why I wanted to show you a dashboard. So calculations created across your sources do not show up in the dashboard tool. You see my revenue is not here, right? Very interesting to me that that happens. But again, something I wanted to point out, something I stumbled over when I was preparing for this webinar, actually, is that those calculations that cross objects do not show up as available for dashboards. You saw that they do show up in reports. It's just in this dashboard tool. They're not there. So I'm going to throw hours in, and that should give me total hours across my entire data set. If I throw last name on here and I throw bill rate on here, It's going to show me last names and their bill rates. The problem is total on a bill rate doesn't make any sense. So I really want to change the aggregation on my bill rate. And I can do that right here and change it to an average, which makes a whole lot more sense for a rate like a bill rate versus something totalable like revenue or hours. So again, wanted to show you the dashboard tool quickly with the data module, again, to point out that calculation anomaly, but also just to show you that I can source a dashboard from the data module that I just created by joining 3 spreadsheets with the data module tool. So that's my demonstration. Let me go back to my slides here. And quickly, before I answer questions, just give you a notion of the kinds of things LPA could help you with relative to Cognos Analytics. First thing is we could help you with your upgrade. We could come in and work with you to install and configure 11 or Cognos Analytics. We could upgrade your models. We could upgrade your content. We could help you test and make sure that the reports and results of those reports, first they run successfully, and second that the results in 11 match the results in 8 or 10, where we're coming from. We can help you as you roll out and as you go live. We can do any or all of those things. In other words, it doesn't have to be an entire outsource of your upgrade. We can augment your team as you do your upgrade if that makes more sense for you. The other thing we can do is we can train you on these new tools. As you saw, the reporting tool has changed. It's combined Report Studio and Cognos Workspace Advanced. Those 2 tools are no longer distinct. And so, learning how to use those for basic reports, for advanced reports, for reports from cubes, and for active reports are all courses that we have specific to the version 11 software. Can also talk to you about the dashboards and data modules. We have a class specifically to help you learn those tools. We also have Dynamic Cube and Framework Manager classes and a whole bunch more classes for the other components of the Cognos Analytics tool. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them are customized to use your data as part of preparing for the class, so that they're very high impact in terms of people not only using sample data, but also using data they're familiar with as they learn these tools. And we can deliver these classes either on-site or remotely. So those are some ideas of how LPA might help you relative to your Cognos Analytics journey. And with that said, I'm going to take a look at the questions that have been submitted via text and answer as many as I can in the few minutes we have left. First question is, do data modules replace Framework Manager? Very common question as I roll this out, even among my staff. The answer is no. They do not replace Framework Manager. They coexist. They are for 2 distinctly different user groups. One's for, let's say, power users. The other is for professional modelers. Framework Manager does a number of things with data security. It allows me to create DMR, OLAP views of my relational data. Dimensionally modeled relational is what DMR stands for. They let me use parameter maps. I can use macros to create SQL on the fly, dynamic SQL, if you will. So there's many, many things that Framework Manager does that data modules do not. However, Framework Manager takes a minimum of a week to learn and a lifetime to master, and most of the end users in the communities that I work with would not necessarily embrace that as the approach to modeling. And yet there is a need, especially if I'm doing self-service BI against my data sets, like I just demonstrated. There's a need when I upload my data that for me to create joins across those. And so this data module tool is a very straightforward web-based tool that would allow me to create the relationships and calculations and things that I need to be able to write the reports I want without having IT intervention to create a package for me and load that data into a relational database before I could access it. It puts me in charge, if you will, of the uploading, the modeling, and the reporting without IT intervention. And that's what self-service BI is all about. So that's the niche that data modules occupy. Do data modules support both DQM and CQM access to data? No. Data modules are specifically for the connections to databases. Those connections are all going to be dynamic query mode only. Compatible query mode is not part of the data module world. It's certainly still part of the package world. Framework Manager packages it with compatible query mode perfectly fine in version 11. But specific to data modules, it is a DQM-based tool, not a CQM-based tool or mixed tool. Where are uploaded files stored? So uploaded files are stored on your Cognos server by default in the subfolder called Data. In your Cognos configuration tool, you can change where the data files are stored, and you could put them on a network share or something like that. But when the files are uploaded, the file itself is converted to a format called Parquet, which is one of those open source format types, and are stored with their metadata on disk. And I think I have time for one last quick question. Can I use a package as a starting point in a data module? No, I can't. So while I could create a data module using another data module as a starting point, I can't create a data module using a package as a starting point, at least not right now. Who knows what the future will bring? All right, I'm told that I am out of time. I do see that there are more questions. I'm sorry I didn't get to all of them, but as I promised before, I will give each question an answer, and I will get back to you via email after the webinar. So all that remains really is for me to thank you very much for your kind attention as we explored data modules together. I look forward to virtually seeing you on our next webinar. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.